What if everything you've been told about Islam is a lie? The media, the government, and the elites all paint Islam as the enemy of modernity. They frame it as extremist, regressive, and dangerous. For centuries, the narrative hasn't changed. A religion trapped in the past, with its prophet being misrepresented and vilified. The Islamophobia Industry Report of 2019 reveals the vast machinery behind this smear campaign. Think tanks like the David Horowitz Freedom Center, with $33 million in donations, collaborate with media and political lobbies to fuel this war. Oxford's media bias studies of 2020 show a staggering reality. Muslim-related headlines are 4 times more negative than those about any other group. Where did this bias come from? Who stands behind these accusations? And what is the moral foundation of their arguments? Do their societies, their values, and their very existence truly hold the moral high ground? Let's take a look at the ones who smear the Prophet, ridicule the Quran, and brand Islam as a threat to civilized society. Let's take a closer look at their civilization and see the morality of their people. See how their leaders perform and how their society functions as a whole. Their empire legalized gay marriage before it fully addressed the systemic issue of child trafficking. Their priests have long been implicated in mass abuse scandals, then shielded by their elites, guarded by legal immunity and institutional silence. They preach love and light, while covering up generations of abuse. Is this progress? Or is it perversion, dressed as liberty? Linda Woodhead, in The Politics of Sexual Abuse in the Church, portrays that the Catholic Church's response to allegations of sexual abuse has been marked by legal maneuvering, secrecy, and a failure to prioritize the victims' voices. The Church has often chosen to protect its institutional image over addressing the systemic problems within its ranks. Their justice system treats black men as disposable, putting them in prisons and morgues at rates unmatched in the world. Meanwhile, Muslim nations are ravaged, sanctioned, and destabilized, then blamed for their own chaos. Is this justice? Or is it power, drunk on its own propaganda? In The Social, Psychological and Political Causes of Racial Disparities in the American Criminal Justice System, Michael Tonry portrays how the imprisonment rates for black Americans have long been 5 to 7 times higher than those for whites. Drug arrest disparities result from police decisions to concentrate attention on drugs blacks sell and places where they sell them. Their schools now push gender ideologies on children who can't even do long division. Shows of perversion are normalized, while traditional families are demonized. And all the while, their people struggle with rising mental health crises. Is this thriving, or is it collapse, moving in slow motion? Christina Hoff Sommers stated in The War Against Boys how misguided policies are harming our young men. that children need to be moral more than they need to be in touch with their feelings. They need to be well educated more than they need classroom self-esteem exercises and support groups. Nor are they improved by having their femininity or masculinity reinvented. Emotional fixes are not the answer. Genuine self-esteem comes with pride in achievement, which is the fruit of disciplined effort. In France alone, Vatican reports confirm over 330,000 victims of clerical abuse. In the US, human trafficking cases have surged over 300% since 2010. And according to the World Population Review, the highest rates of self-harm and mental illness are found in secular Western nations. US, France, and Belgium rank among the top 10 globally in suicide rates despite being the most advanced. Their institutions are rotting and their clergy filled with predators. An empty husk propped up by slogans, screens and spin, yet claiming the moral high ground. Simply because they have dominance in the political and economic power play in the world. But if that's their excuse, then we also need to ask, where did that dominance come from? What was its foundation? And who actually paid for it? History has already recorded the answer. The modern West didn't rise through innovation or virtue, but through conquest. A series of systematic, calculated, and brutal enterprises. They enslaved entire populations, then wrote it off as discovery. They burned libraries, razed cities, and erased languages, then called it civilizing. An empire of oppressors dressed in virtue. Every major Western power, Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, and by default America, built their power through conquest and subjugation. And the justification wasn't science or human rights, but religion, Christianity. In 1452, the Catholic Church issued a decree, Dum Diversas, explicitly institutionalizing long-term enslavement of non-Christians. And this wasn't fringe theology, but a state policy backed by popes and kings. In The Devil in Society in Pre-Modern Europe, Richard Raiswell described how Dum Diversas of 1452, issued by Pope Nicholas V, authorized the Portuguese crown to invade, capture, vanquish and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. This bull institutionalized religious conquest and sanctioned long-term enslavement under Catholic imperial authority. From there came the doctrine of discovery, a legal religious framework declaring that any land not ruled by Christians was empty. It gave divine cover to theft, genocide, and colonization, a doctrine still embedded in their laws today. As Stephen T. Newcomb stated in Pagans in the Promised Land, Decoding the Doctrine of Christian Discovery, the 1493 papal bull Inter Caetera declared that lands not ruled by Christians could be seized under divine authority. The doctrine of discovery became the basis for secular property law across colonial states. Churches were power brokers disguised as spiritual centers. They were the landowners, financiers, and legitimizers of colonial rule. Every flag planted in the global south marched with a Bible in one hand and a rifle in the other. Even now they're still doing it, only with contract in one hand and a drone in the other. In Concilium, International Journal of Theology, Peter Canyandago stated that Pope Nicholas V issued another bull, Romanus Pontifex, on the 8th of January 1455. This bull settled the conflict between Portugal and Castile, Spain, over who had rights to colonize, take slaves, and trade in Africa and along the African coast. Now they claim it's all in the past, that they have evolved, that they have moved on. But if they have truly repented, then they would also have renewed their system as well, giving out different outcome. Yet their empires still function the same. Thus it begs the question, have they really? When the moral contradictions became too obvious, they didn't apologize. They simply rebranded. The cross came off, the suit came on, and the system kept moving. The same engine with the new paint job. They don't solely rely on armies anymore. Now they have algorithms. They no longer need to burn books. Instead, they saturate cultures with vice, distraction, and distortion. Hijab is criminalized while drag shows are televised. The Quran is desecrated while explicit content is algorithmically rewarded. Scholars are deplatformed and replaced by self-help profiteers and short-term attention hackers. OnlyFans stars are paraded as glamorous icons, becoming role models for an infantilized generation. Philip Reef described this in The Triumph of the Therapeutic. Religious man was born to be saved. Psychological man is born to be pleased, and the difference is not trivial. The shift signals a culture in which sacred order is displaced by the primacy of self-expression. SEMrush statistics show that the top 19 countries make up for 70% of global traffic to pornographic sites, with 18.41% comes from the United States alone as the highest source. The very society that parades as guardians of dignity and rights is the one consuming the most digital exploitation. Meta whistleblower Frances Haugen revealed how hate and exploitation get algorithmic priority, because rage and lust sell. The platforms that billions of people depend on aren't neutral tools, but psychological manipulation. They're designed to hijack attention, exploit emotion, and suppress any content that challenges the dominant ideology. Islamic voices are shadow banned, while toxic viral contents are algorithmically boosted. And while truth is muted, a new priesthood has risen. Teal Swan, Jay Letty, Mel Robbins, and the other digital prophets are preaching discipline in the form of self-worship. Under the mask of masculinity and wellness, they offer billion-dollar identity crises. They program a generation to believe salvation lies not in God, but in grinding harder, looking better, and feeling good. In the culture of narcissism, Christopher Lasch explained that the narcissistic personality is a defense against feelings of worthlessness and an intense need for admiration. The social order encourages the individual to define his own identity, but it provides no means for fulfilling the needs it arouses. Hollywood, the porn empire, the self-help cults, the guru economy, and the music industry. They all sell the same creed: worship yourself. Serve your desires and call it freedom. Because a population addicted to itself doesn't rebel. It just scrolls, buys, and lusts until at the end it dies. They said they walked away from religion, but in reality they just built a new one. They don't worship the Creator. What they worship is power. Their real creed? My truth, my identity, and my body, my rules. Because as humans we will always worship something, even if it's ourselves. Secularism is just idolatry with better marketing. A trinity of new idols to replace their old ones: the self, the state, and the dollar. And every one of them demands obedience. This is their theology now, and they preach it with the zeal of missionaries. Not from pulpits, but from TED Talks. Not in mosques, but on TikTok. Because this faith feeds the empire. It produces addicts instead of believers, and consumers instead of worshippers. And while their churches run empty, this new religion thrives. Because it tells you there's nothing above you. No creator to answer to. No truth except the one you invent. And no higher purpose than the next pleasure hit. In Simulacra and Simulation, Jean Baudrillard described how in a world where the real has been replaced by a hyper-reality, the consumer is no longer a subject, but an object in the service of consumption itself. Yuval Harari, a senior advisor to the World Economic Forum, made an infamous statement that reveals the mindset: God is dead. It just takes a while to get rid of the body. This isn't academic cynicism, but policy. The philosophical scaffolding of an empire. But there's one thing they can't digitize. One system they can't rewrite. One code they can't corrupt. Islam remains immutable and unbreakable. A faith where ego is crushed, not worshipped. Where desires are mastered, not monetized. Where truth is not personalized, but revealed. Where society is built on submission, not seduction. Islam integrates faith into society in an unprecedented way. As Jonathan Brown outlined in Misquoting Muhammad, the challenge and choices of interpreting the Prophet's legacy, Islamic ethics do not pander to desires or material aspirations. Instead, the faith calls for mastering one's desires through devotion, discipline, and submission to divine will, contrasting sharply with the monetization of desires seen in secular societies. And this is why it's a threat. Its resilience defies every effort they threw at it, and strike back with truth, honor, and compassion. Global surveillance reports continue to flag Islamic communities as high risk. Not because Islam is violent, but because it doesn't submit to empire. It submits only to God. And that terrifies them. Islam is the unbreakable system, and the evidence speaks for itself. Whether it's the accelerating conversions to Islam, the deep sense of purpose felt by those who embrace it, or the resilience of Muslim communities in crisis. Pew Research shows that Islam is the fastest growing religion by conversion, not birth rate. More and more people are turning to Islam, driven by its clarity, purpose, and order. In a world of chaos, it offers structure. And those who embrace it testify to this, much like the reports from Harvard Muslim Chaplaincy, which cite that converts point to purpose and clarity as the driving force behind their choice. Islam doesn't bend to the system, but shapes it. It doesn't reform to fit the world, but reforms the world to fit divine truth. Zakat destroys materialism. Fasting crushes ego. Salat reorders time itself. And Tawheed collapses every man-made ideology. And that's why they hate it. That's why they slander it. They know it's unbendable, so they push you away from it. UN data on refugee resilience further highlights that Muslim-majority communities show higher recovery rates, stronger family cohesion, and a more robust charitable infrastructure in crisis zones. Former gang leaders, addicts, and atheists all find the same thing in Islam: structure, healing, and truth. A system that doesn't just tell you who you are, but guides you to live it. You're not being liberated by your secular leaders. You're being pacified. You're being fed, stroked, and flattered so you stay weak. You're told to be your own God, while worshipping the system that controls you. They don't want you to be strong. They want you to be pliable, compliant, and addicted. They know Islam breaks their chains. They know it can't be reprogrammed, can't be co-opted, and can't be stopped. So, they slander it. They vilify the deen that threatens their thrones. This isn't just cultural warfare. This is a war on Islam. A war on the seal of the prophets. A war on truth itself. This is a war on God.